Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, whatever time it is. I hope it's good. It is. It's dark outside. It's 6:52. You know, it's like it's getting to that point where the sun is out just a little bit longer. I mean, like Jeffrey and I, we are both coming out of our winter cocoons. I think the last time we did our podcast, Jeff, wasn't it still getting dark at like 3:15 or something ridiculous?
Yes. When I would leave the house, I would leave the lights on because when I would get back, it was already dark. So I'm like, well, why turn them off at that point?
I know. And it's like you always hear these stories about like, oh, you know, Seattle's like the most depressing place in America. And I'm like, have you been to Ohio in the winter? I mean, it's so dark.
It's dark, but I will say the snow we've had kind of, even though it's dark out, it makes things look a little bit nicer.
Thank you for
If you don't have to leave the house, it makes things look a little bit nicer and not as dreary. But as I say that, there's all the snow has melted and it's still dark.
Jeffrey is speaking the gospel truth here. I'm not a religious person, but when it's like snowy out and it's dark, it's like I have two things. One, snow is just sort of like a romantic thing. Am I right? I mean,
yes,
it feels nice.
100%.
100%.
Yep.
And not only that, but I've noticed that like when it's snowy and it's cloudy, there's this weird sort of like, and this is, I hate to get like, this is a jazz podcast, so I hate to get all physics about it, but like the light sort of bounces between the snow and the clouds, and it's actually kind of bright out, even at midnight.
Yes.
You can sort of look across the landscape, so it's just gorgeous. Today, granted, it's 60 degrees, but it's rainy. It's like, and a reflective rainy ground just eats the light, so it's darker than dark.
Yeah, but like you alluded to earlier, at least it's getting lighter and staying lighter a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I can get home around 5 and it's not pitch black dark out. It's getting there, but
and I was never
not
that
quite.
person. Yeah, I was never that person. It's like I used to love winter, and you know, all the adults would like wiggle their finger and be like, "Oh, just wait till you're an adult and you're struggling with seasonal depression." I'm like, "Screw you, old person!" And now I'm like, "When does the sun come back?"
See, I don't mind it. Actually, last night I put some jazz music on, plug in our music. It was in the shuffle.
There you go.
And it was a vibe. I was doing some chores around the house, and even though it was dark out, I had some good music on. Didn't mind that it was dark at, 5:30.
I appreciate that, like the whole concept of the vibe. It's like I love taking photos, so a couple nights ago, I knew that it was going to rain, so I grabbed my camera. I went downtown. I was looking for all those beautiful sort of neon light reflections in the puddles, and just trying, like you said, trying to capture that vibe. So yeah, Jeffery, good point. It's like there's definitely something that's sort of like, I mean, man, what a weird time to love jazz, because sort of that chill hop jazz revival, we're right in the middle of it right now.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so effing cool, man. It's like, if you loved jazz like 5 years ago, people were like, wow, what rock did you crawl out from under? And now if you love jazz, people are like, oh my God, like they're like, did you hear? I mean, I swear to goodness, I've had conversations about the jazz cover of Legend of Zelda songs.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've discovered, well, actually, I like that you bring up Nintendo, because their music isn't officially on, at least Apple Music.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look up like Legend of Zelda, you'll get like these awesome jazz renditions, because that's all that's on there. And it's awesome. Like, it's super cool hearing music that but it's got this great jazz twist on it that you're like, this is, now you want to talk about a vibe. Ocarina of Time, jazz, amazing.
Wow, we just got, we lost every audience member we had. These nerds. But it's true. There's a Japanese jazz quartet that only covered. God, I'm just getting so deep into the nerd vibe right now. They cover only Nintendo games, and like I was listening to their album where all they do is Castlevania, and now like, yeah, this is good. I was like, I'll have to look them up. So next time we have our little podcast, I'll see if I can get some of that information for you. But if you just look up Japanese jazz quartet that covers video games, you'll find them. I mean, how many can it be, for God's sakes? Like 2 at best. At best. But in the middle of all that, I mean, and this is on my, you know how like sometimes when a song is stuck in your head, you just have to listen to it on the radio so you can let it go?
Yes.
Well, this is not a song. Have you seen Hank the Tank?
Is that the giant bear?
Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
I have been obsessed. So anybody who's not in the know, look up Hank the Tank. It's a 500-pound bear that is like terrorizing houses because he loves people food. He loves Lay's potato chips, hot dogs, everything that I love. Only thing is he has some impulse control problems apparently, because Hank the Tank cannot stop eating, but I just cannot stop thinking about Hank the Tank today.
Yeah, I don't quite know his whole backstory, but like there's tons of pictures of him, and God, that is an absolute unit of a bear. Like he is just, oh my God.
He is
not jazz related, but man, he is a big bear.
Not jazz related at all, but like I think it was like 4 o'clock today. I kept thinking about Hank the Tank in my head, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna bring it up to Jeffrey so I can let it go. I just need to let it go. Let all the jazz lovers out there absorb Hank the Tank, the absolutely massive bear coming to a kitchen near you. For goodness sakes. But, and I guess this is another kind of thing, but I promise this will bleed into jazz here. Are you a big astrology guy, Jeff?
Oh, okay. So I got kind of a cop-out answer. Like, I don't follow it per se, but it weirds me out whenever things come true from it. Like, you'll read something on it and you're like, God, it predicted this completely. It shouldn't, but it creeps me out. So somewhat, yes, like I'm interested, but I don't follow it, if that makes sense.
I'm the exact same way. I'm a massive science guy. I love physics, but there's times when it's like, oh, ghosts? Yeah, sure, why not? Like,
Sure.
Or somebody will be like, hey, man, you should wear this amethyst crystal so that way your fingernails aren't brown anymore. And I'm like, sure, well, I can give anything a try at this point. Nobody wants to shake hands with me. It's not true. My fingernails aren't brown, okay? Let's not start vicious rumors. But anyway, today is 02/22/2022 on a Tuesday.
It's insane, and I didn't realize, I realized it this morning, and I just thought, oh, that's kind of cute, right? But then now there's like all this stuff coming out that it means something, and I didn't realize that. So
what does it mean? We don't know. Jeff and I are not astrology experts. We cannot tell you what your future is. Stop calling us. I mean, I can't tell you if your relationship is going to work or not, okay? But what we can tell you about is jazz. That,
heck yeah,
Jeffrey and I are experts at. So sit back and relax because the show officially starts right now. Of course, February, aside from having 02/22/2022, is also Black History Month, and this is something that I am acutely aware of because this is a really good chance for me and Jeffrey to highlight. I mean, in some ways it's like, I have all of my musician friends and I don't think I have one single musician friend who's white, okay? So it's like, whenever you bring up, Black History Month, they're just like, hey, that's every day for us, for God's sake.
Yes. Yeah.
And you realize quickly that Black History Month is sort of for everybody else. It's sort of to help sort of raise awareness and let people know sort of what they're missing out on. Because a lot of the history obviously is sort of skewed towards the majority. I mean, just to get away from the political correctness for a second and just get into the reality of it, it is always going to be skewed towards the majority. So this is a really good chance for me. I am a drummer. My friends are drummers. And, we represent here at Night of the Live some amazing drummers. And so this is a chance for Jeffrey and I to sort of talk about a couple amazing musicians that we want to celebrate for Black History Month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just giving Jeffrey sort of a really quick rundown of sort of one of the guys I was thinking about today. And this is a drummer who I was so happy that I don't think you heard of Omar before, right, Jeffrey?
No. Okay. Nope. First time.
It makes me so happy. I mean, I want everybody to know about Omar. His name is Omar Hakim. If you go right now and you just sort of YouTube Omar Hakim, your mind will be blown. Especially if you're a kid like me and you've lived through the 80s. And when I say a kid like me, I mean a child of the 80s. Because he has played with... Well, here, we'll just get into it right now. So who has he performed with? He's performed with Weather Report, who by far is, if you look into jazz... And if our last podcast, Jeffrey, about the history of jazz, believe it or not, that was the last one I think oh no, the one before the last one.
Yes.
We worked with Kathy. But Weather Report, in the 70s, Weather Report really redefined what modern jazz is. They are definitely known for sort of that transitional period of what modern jazz is. He has worked as the drummer for Weather Report. Okay, so now... You're like, okay, so he's a jazz drummer. Yes, but what would be the opposite side of the spectrum? How about the Foo Fighters?
Yes, I pulled up his Wikipedia. Wow, this first paragraph.
I know, it makes no sense. So
insane.
I will read what Jeffrey's looking at right now. Let's just read it verbatim together. Weather Report, David Bowie. Oh, there's the Foo Fighters right there. Sting, Madonna, Dire Straits, Journey, Kate Bush, George Benson, Miles Davis, Daft Punk, Mariah Carey, the Pussycat Dolls, and David Lee Roth, and Celine Dion. Here's the crazy thing. It's like what they don't have on there is that he's also worked with Michael Jackson. I mean, which I think is... Yeah, it's kind of a strange omission to sort of not have that there in that first...
Oh yeah, there it is, down at the bottom.
Yep. So he is an amazing drummer. So let's just take a moment and talk about that Daft Punk reference. If you remember, what was the song with, Get Lucky with Pharrell?
Oh, yes.
That's Omar Hakim.
What?
Yes.
He's in that? No way.
That's his riff. I mean, like, he is in some ways sort of the king of... He's the king of all these things. Like when you watch, he's so multi-talented that when you watch, like say a jazz video of him, you think to yourself, he is a jazz drummer. When you see him working sort of in a Latin set, he is a Latin drummer. I think Santana is on this list too. I would have to look, but I'm pretty sure Santana's on the list too. You would, in fact, I can guarantee that he's played with Santana. You would think of him as like, he's like, he's a Latinx drummer. When you see him with David Bowie, you think, he's like a pop drummer. When you see the work that he's done with the Foo Fighters, like he's a rock drummer. But what he is a drummer. He's like just a physically amazing drummer, but most importantly, he's what they call a session drummer. And if you're familiar with music, or more specifically music recording, a session drummer is quite often a guy who comes in, even very famous bands who have their drummers, and you go and you see them on tour and you're like, oh yeah, I love that drummer. Quite often, because the drums are the metronome upon which all the rest of the music is sort of laid to. If you've never been to what they call tracking or just a recording session, the other musicians will often lay a scratch track. The drummer will go in and lay what's known as the tracking track, and that it's that sort of empty drum track that the drummer puts down first that all of the rest of the music is sort of played to. And even, exactly. So even your most favorite, most famous drummers, they aren't always capable of producing that. I mean, it takes a very... And me being, having played drums for almost 2 decades now, I could tell you that, like, I would be a great stage drummer. The charisma is one thing, but a session drummer, I would be very uncomfortable being the guy who sort of puts down that rock solid, sort of that ground level foundation. So that's something that Omar Hakim has done. He is just this wonderful, wonderful drummer who goes around and he plays all these iconic songs that we all quite often attribute to other musicians, which is crazy.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, when you put it that way, I didn't realize that's how they recorded music. And like, I didn't realize that the drums were that integral to it. That's awesome. Very cool. But then, so just the skill somebody would have to go from, again, just looking at his Wikipedia page, you go from David Bowie to the Foo Fighters to Miles Davis and Celine Dion, like that ability to switch genres like that and do it so well. Like, man, he should be... Not that he's not a household name, but I mean, he's people, at least I think, probably Phil Collins might be the most famous drummer, right? I would argue.
I mean, honestly, it's like when you think about Phil Collins and you think about drumming, I guess the 2 people who come to mind is, oh my God, I'm going to feel like such a nerd for not knowing his name, but the drummer from the Eagles, who also sang a lot. Oh, I guess I would say him, Phil Collins, and probably Dave Grohl, right?
Okay. And the Beatles, right? Ringo.
And Ringo. Yeah, I mean, now, see, here's the problem. I'm so biased. Like, whenever, I'm like, oh, well, what about, then I started thinking about all...
Sure.
But when you do think about, like, sort of, frontmen who lead the charge, yeah, I guess I always think about people, like you said, I think about Dave Grohl a lot, I think about Phil Collins a lot. They really sort of come to the front.
But those guys aren't doing all these different genres that Omar has done or is doing right now.
Correct.
To me, I mean, like, that's just, he's on a whole other level of talent at that point. To be able to switch between genres like that.
That's so true. I mean, it's so true. And like, it's, when you're in a podcast, this is purely an audio format. I really, really, really just urge people to go to YouTube and just search Omar Hakim drum solos, because you'll see him with Sting. You'll see him on just drumming exhibitions. You'll see him in all these really cool settings. And it's just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing to me still as a drummer all these years, because I think, look, I should just be very forthcoming here. When I say that I'm a drummer, I am a drummer somewhere low on the hobby scale. There are people out there who are true drummers. They are the people who it's like that's the pinnacle of their artistic expression. And just Omar Hakim is at that level of artistic expression. Like, his artistry sort of lives in the drum kit. And it's just weird to see people sort of do the same things that famous artists do with paint or photography or videography or the written language, to see him do that with a pair of drumsticks. It's mind-bogglingly good. And another interesting guy I want to switch to, and I this is somebody who I just thought of, who is an amazing story, and I did not bring this up I did not prep Jeffrey for this guy, but I just thought about him when we were talking about famous drummers. Jeffrey, are you familiar with a guy who, his name was William Henry Webb, but he was known as Chick Webb? Are you familiar with Chick Webb?
Wow, sounds kind of familiar.
Okay.
Why? Why should I know him? Because that name, like I said, sounds familiar.
You definitely have heard his name 100 million times. A lot of people don't understand the significance, because I didn't understand the significance of Chick Webb until much later. But Chick Webb was a very, very, very famous American jazz drummer, and he performed sort of, well, here, let me just tell you how long. He was only around for I think 34 years. He only lived to 34 years of age, but he was very famous. The interesting thing about Chick Webb as a drummer is that he was born with some very severe, I think it had to do with his spine. In fact, let me look that up just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure he was born with some very serious, okay, right here. So he had an injury that progressed to tuberculosis of the spine, which when you see what pot disease is, it's not a pretty disease. And so he was a very, very short individual with just an extremely deformed spine. The interesting thing about Chick Webb is, under any other circumstance, those kind of, and again, this is another person who there is some film of him out there, so I highly recommend that you go and you look him up. But through his very short lifespan, and he suffered from this through this illness through his entire life, he played drums so amazingly. And even as this disease progressed, he just got his drum sets constantly remade so that way they would work for him through his deformity.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he would have these drum sets, and I'm trying to find a picture so I can describe it to you. But he played drums pretty much better than anybody of that era. But his drum sets were completely remade to sort of fit him, his small stature. Yeah, I'm looking at these photos now, and it's hard to explain, but the camera is literally looking down on a guy who may not be standing maybe more than 3 or 3.5 feet. It's hard to tell. It's a very small set, and he played those things through all of these, through this physical deformity, disease, and illness that he was suffering with. Made a name for himself. Tragically short life, but he was just an absolutely amazing jazz drummer. So if you get a chance, so far on your list is to look up Omar Hakim, and then to look up Chick Webb, and you will be inspired. You'll be inspired by both of them, possibly for 2 different reasons. But yeah, Chick Webb. Go look up Chick Webb.
Yeah, look at his. Ella Fitzgerald led his band after he died. Talk about obviously huge name there. And then Duke Ellington credited him, Webb, for influencing his music. There's 2 huge jazz legends, not just jazz music legends, right?
Yep.
That both credit their careers from him. That's, wow, that is cool.
Well, I think in some ways he's sort of seen as the father of that early American swing. So when we talk about, if you reference our video or our podcast from 2 episodes ago, The History of Jazz, you'll see that there's this amazing sort of boom or this creation of jazz in the 1920s. That's Chick Webb is. He's responsible for that. When you think about the drums, you think about the rhythm section. That's his mark. And then I think even I'm scanning his Wikipedia page right now, but I'm pretty sure Gene Krupa said that that Webb was sort of the guy who paved the. Oh, right here it is. Yeah. So Gene Krupa credited Webb with raising, the drummer awareness, thus paving the way for drummer-led bands of it like his own. So there you go. Gene Krupa, another amazing jazz drummer, credits Chick Webb for sort of creating the drummer-led jazz band, and it's true. So yeah, so please Omar, so far on your list, this is your to-do list, your homework. We got Omar Hakim, that's one. Number 2 is Chick Webb. And then my personal favorite. Now this one I did give Jeffrey a little bit of a warning on here. This guy, Max Roach. Max Roach.
I can see your excitement right now, by the way. I know the audience can't, but...
You don't know what's going on here, all right? We have a webcam.
I can see the excitement.
And, like, this is, I feel, first of all, like, because of Jeffrey's sensibility, I decided to wear clothes on webcam tonight. Normally, it's not a problem, right? Because we're on a podcast. So most people can't tell what I'm not wearing or am wearing. It's up to you. It's up to your imagination. But yeah. So my excitement is completely in my face right now. I promise. I love Max Roach. Max Roach is one of the most magical drummers in terms of. It's weird to use terms like enchanting. It's weird to use terms like canvas. You know. I think in metaphors, like when Max Roach plays, in my head, I see like curtains rising to bright stage lights. When I think of Max Roach playing, I see beautiful sunsets. I see headlights, you know, in busy downtowns. It's like...
He's got a vibe, like we were talking about earlier. He's a huge vibe.
Exactly like a vibe. I think people... like us use music as a soundtrack, right?
Yes.
It's like, how do I put the soundtrack to my day? And that's kind of what Max Roach has been to me. And not only that, but Max Roach is one of those guys where, you know, he was around in the 50s. He was in that post-war era. So again, there's sort of like these 3 big blocks of modern jazz. It is that 1890s to 1920s. It is that 1920s to 1950s, and it is that 1950s through the 70s to the present. And when you start talking about Chick Webb, he was in that, you know, that 1900s to 1920s block, and Max Roach sort of comes in those 1950s, and he really sort of turns just the jazz world upside down in terms of like kind of how you approach music. You know, there's a great album in the 1960s that he both composed and recorded. It's called We Insist, and it is just a fantastic record where I always hate to describe music because I just feel like I just want to say, just go listen to it. But,
well, they should. People listening, if you haven't heard of him, looking again at his Wikipedia article, filled with just jazz legends. I mean, it's easy to say that, but this guy has worked with some of the most famous people possible. So check his stuff out. Because we can talk about it. But the only way you'll get to experience it is if you actually do listen to it. So
I think that's important. Jeffrey is the best.
Yes.
I mean, like we don't have the rights to the music, so we can't. I would be like, check out this clip of Max Roach. But it's like, you know, he's one of the nice things about him is like if you love Thelonious Monk and if you love Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie, you're going to find that all of their work is sort of rooted in this this Max Roach sensibility. I think, you know, when other artists will often, you know, like when you describe somebody, you're like, oh, you know, he kind of sounds like John Mellencamp. Or you're like, oh, this guy kind of sounds, you know, like this artist. Or this guy sort of sounds like this artist. Max Roach is the guy who other artists sound like. Like he is so base level. He's so foundational that like when you start to listen to jazz from sort of the 50s all the way through the 90s, you will find that Max Roach, he's either the drummer that you're falling in love with, or the other drummers that you might be falling in love with, they're using Max Roach as that foundational sound. They kind of use him as that basis. So yeah, we'll just go through some of those. Let's just talk about him real quick here. So yeah, so he's performed with Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, who we've talked about many times, Thelonious Monk, who is just an absolute mastermind, Coleman Hawkins, Bud Powell, Miles Davis. One of these days, though, we really have to do. Are you a big fan of some of those heavy biography podcasts that they have on NPR, Jeff?
Give me some names, podcast names. I don't think so.
They'll talk about. I feel like like last podcast on the left will go through some of these. You know, they'll not always biography, but they'll kind of get into stories, like really sort of weird stories where there's a lot of things you don't know about a person.
No, the only NPR one I listen to is Wait, Don't Tell Me. Love that one.
Yes. Oh my God.
That's NPR plug. We're not sponsored.
Yeah, and I should check, because maybe last podcast, they may not even be NPR-ish, but I just think of NPR as having such good podcasts. Yeah, I should probably take that back, because I don't think last podcast on the left is NPR. But they'll get into everything, right? They'll talk about sort of like the weird sort of aspects about things that you may not realize from whatever it is. It could be Bigfoot to whatever. But one of these days, maybe the next one, we're going to get into Miles Davis, because oh my God, did Miles Davis have kind of an interesting life? Sometimes frightening. But I digress. But Max Roach, he was part of that whole scene. And I think one of the interesting things about Max Roach is that, there's a lot of there's definitely been a decline in jazz, and pop music took a lot of that away from everybody. I mean,
sure.
You want to talk about sort of the modernization of music, you just have to look sort of towards Michael Jackson. And he just so ruled the roost, sort of. You go from basically the rock movement, the anti-war movement, and which really sort of propelled rock, hippie rock, regular rock, whatever it is, into pop rock. There was this, as you watch that sort of like climb on the charts, you can definitely see jazz take a little bit of a dip. But even throughout that, Max Roach still had an absolutely massive impact with a lot of modern music. Like here, I'm even looking that Roach, he created these amazing duets with other performers, including, believe it or not, a recorded duet with the oration of the "I Have a Dream" speech of Martin Luther King.
What?
Yeah, and it's a duet with video artist Kit Fitzgerald. And
no kidding.
Yeah, you can actually go see that. But I mean, it's just kind of an interesting thing, because he's kind of reaching into that multimedia realm there, which, when I think about it, the only other person I can think of who has ever sort of reached into the multimedia stuff like that would be, it was this Herbie Hancock.
Oh, true. Very true.
He would be sort of in that same realm. Max Roach, he's written music for theater, including plays by Sam Shepard. Sam Shepard, obviously an amazing playwright.
No way. Yeah.
Extremely famous playwright. So it's really cool to see Max Roach working on that. And right now, when I'm talking about Max Roach, we're like in the 80s and the 90s. So we're not even talking about that foundational jazz. I kind of think, his ability to stay relevant was an amazing thing.
Yes. And you want to talk about a guy that has awards. Holy cow. He's got a list of stuff that he's won or been given because of how good his music is or his drum playing skills. I mean, two of them, we worked with Downbeat. They've reviewed several of our albums. He's in their Hall of Fame, and he's in the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame. I mean, this guy, they're all talented, but he's got a list of accolades here that I don't know if I've seen many people in our industry with this much stuff given to them, or awards or honors. Wow.
Yeah.
8 honorary doctorate degrees. I mean, this is a talented guy.
He is amazing, and there's some stuff that he has done which he sort of gets co-creator or co-founder credit on. Like there's that style of music that just kind of, it sort of precedes sort of that Motown pop, and that would be sort of like this, what they call like bebop. And there's a very specific sort of beat that goes, it's just literally called the Bebop Beat. And there is another artist, his name is Kenny Clark, and Kenny is usually sort of given the honors of inventing bebop. But the truth is, it's like Max sort of popularized it.
Sure.
Or at least it would be kind of like saying, well, you know, we've to reference Michael Jackson again, he didn't invent pop, but there's only one king of pop.
Yes.
And that's kind of Michael Jackson.
Right.
Like, you know,
right.
There's a lot of people who don't invent something, but they refine it and perfect it. And
Yes.
that's another place where sort of Max Roach really has a massive footprint. And then again, so if you want to go look up versions of bebop, you know, go listen to that. There's another thing. There's another type of music. Some people call it hard bop. And hard bop, again, it's like, you know, the whole concept of bop, and this is one of the things I love as a drummer, is that the whole bop sensation is sort of, it's an interplay between the right cymbals, the snare, and the bass. Hard bop is a whole nother sort of take on bebop. Again, Max Roach is right there. Obviously, he's gonna go ahead and you know, be a part of that. Obviously, coming from bebop into hard bop.
Right.
He's an amazing trio musician. He has worked with so many trios. There's an album by, oh goodness, Bud Powell. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
If you look up Bud Powell, I'm trying to find it right now.
Okay, let me search here, Bud.
Okay, here we go. So here they talk about it. So Bud Powell, he transforms Bud Powell's Un Poco Loco into a personal tour de force. And right here they're talking about it. He uses cowbell, drum, cymbals, and that's like kind of the thing. So, you know, your drum kit used to be, when you drum, there's something called like accents. And
Okay.
Accent usually is sort of like where are you putting, in layman's terms, it's about where are you putting the most force sort of behind a beat. So if you think about 4/4 beats, right? So if we just do a little exercise and we just count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we're gonna do that same exercise, but we're gonna put the accent on different numbers. And I'll just say a number louder, right? So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1,
Okay.
2, 3, 4. So that whole concept of the accents, right? That just seems so mundane when I say it like that. But somebody like Max Roach could utilize tools like the accent. Not only would he utilize them and turn them into something new, but he would take them to other pieces of his equipment. So he would be playing things like using the cowbell and cymbals in ways that usually were only relegated to things like the snares and the bass drum. Again, it's so hard to explain this without like playing a clip, but please just go look this up. You'll understand.
We should, maybe our podcast, we should put together like a 5-song playlist of the people we talk about and say, hey, check out our playlist. We found the best people or the best songs that represent these guys the most. But let's like, do you have a song from him? Or okay, yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it
yes,
right
we
now.
can do it right now.
So song number 1, go look up Uno Poco Loco, all right? Uno Poco Loco by Bud Powell. You'll find it. I've got it right here in front of me. Well, I'm really lucky here because there's another great song here with Herbie Nichols trio, the Herbie Nichols trio called "The Gig." That is another amazing song. So go look up "The Gig." You'll appreciate that.
Okay.
And then I'm trying to see if there's another. I'm looking at a couple songs here. Oh my God, yes! And look up "Tempest Fugit." Look up Tempest Fugit. It's a TEMPUSFUGIT. That is another amazing song. That's just a great song. Like I love that song before I even know it was Max Roach playing on that song. So look up Tempest Fugit. And then the two other songs you can just use go down the rabbit hole, click on related videos.
Yeah, just start vibing, right? That's our word this podcast. Put some of these on, discover some drummers.
This is your chance to get out there and just really discover some drummers. And while you're discovering those drummers, you know, I really could talk about Max for another hour and really kind of get into the details. I've been trying to stay away from it because it'll take us 2 hours to get through all of his details, but I just wanted to segue really quick in here. And this is something that Jeff and I totally are passionate about. And that is somebody in our own team right now.
Yes.
We're talking none other than Willie Jones III.
Love Willie.
I totally second that opinion. So this is some behind the scenes. Whenever we talk about Willie, I'm always like, Willie is a very wonderful guy, and he's so humble.
Yes.
And I'm always constantly saying, please convince Willie to let us just blow the crap out of him. And I mean that like in the best possible way, like just totally blow him up, to just plaster him everywhere. And he is so humble. He constantly resists all of those advances. You know, he's one of those guys who's like, let my music sort of speak to itself. I think he is inspired by somebody like Max Roach, who is recognized only through his music versus marketing, which we totally respect that. And
yes.
But sorry, Willie, we're about to just sort of, you know, lay it on pretty thick here. All right, so
in a good way. In a good way.
In a good way. So right now, if you go, you'll see, thanks to it being just, 7 days past one of our favorite jazz holidays, Valentine's Day.
Yes. Yep.
There's an album out there called Lovers and Love Songs. If you look up Willie Jones III, this will be one of the very first albums that you'll see. And this, just coincidentally, this album also just happens to be one of the very first times, Jeffrey, you and I met.
Yes.
It's that project that brought us together. I mean, just out of curiosity, when you think Lovers and Love Songs, the album, kind of like, what's sort of your memory? Because now it's a couple years past.
Yes. Well, I remember, the thing I remember most about it, I actually mentioned it earlier, funny enough, when we got the review in Downbeat magazine for it. I thought, this is a big deal, right? Like, yeah, I knew the album was great, but to see literally our work featured on Downbeat magazine, I was like, this is legit. This is awesome. It was great seeing the hard work that the guys on the band put in their album. That recognition, that is awesome. So that's the first thing. Every time I think about Lovers and Love Songs, I think about that Downbeat review.
I totally agree. So when I first got into the whole jazz industry, I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. It's like, you know, everything is about the art, but there are times where it's like, well, you know, you want to be validated. As an artist, the only thing that like really means anything to you is like, you know, you want to be expressive.
Yes.
And not every artist shares this. But I mean, being an artist, I think I speak for a vast majority. You want to be validated. You want to know people appreciate what you do. So there are only a few sort of major places where you can sort of reach that validation. Quite honestly, Downbeat's one of the biggest. And
Yes.
The last thing you want to do is the last thing you ever want to see is for Downbeat to say something like, they missed the mark.
Right. Close enough.
Yeah, right. They're trying for something, but they can never quite reach it on this album.
Yep.
That has been anything but what our experience with Downbeat has been. It's always been the opposite. We have worked with people who are knocking it out of the park, and the introduction to that experience for myself, for Jeffrey, was this Lovers and Love Songs album. I mean, when I first heard this album, which, by the way, it's credited to the WJ3 All-Stars. That's the Willie Jones 3 All-Stars. He is just like Max, just like Chick Webb, just like Omar Hakim. He is a leader. He is a professional. He's both a frontman and a studio drummer. I mean, I feel like I just realized that maybe I needed to go back and sort of talk about his skill, because I'm feeling like maybe it's just assumed. Don't assume anything. He's amazing. Just will blow your mind, but he is an incredible musician. He is a technical drummer. He's an artistic drummer. Normally, those two things don't go together. Like, you think about there's these arguments all the time in music. It's like, is he technical or is he artistic? And very rarely do they come together, right? So Willie's one of those people where the two come together. He's technical and artistic. It's phenomenal. I'm not going to belabor the point. Just, again, go look at it, listen to his music for yourself. But when I first heard this album, it was so evocative. It became my soundtrack to like an entire several months of just, I would turn it on in the morning. When we would market this thing, I would listen to it nonstop. We did crazy things about it. Do you remember the marketing campaign for this job?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I've not quite done anything in marketing since then. And I'm a little disappointed, but that was I have such fond memories of that album. But
it was crazy. We had people marching through national parks looking for clues.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into it, but it was crazy.
Yes.
But that album, and if you're interested in that album, I'm just going to go ahead. We're here. Might as well plug a Rooney away.
Plug away.
You go to nightisalive.com, and there's a little, on the navigation, there's a little button there that says music, and on there is Lovers and Love Songs. You're gonna find them, and you're gonna see all the artists. But let's just talk about the band real quick, just to get this out of the way. Willie Jones III, that's our spotlight guy. But then we got Ralph Moore, for God's sakes. Steve
Jay Leno
guy, and Ralph Moore. Steve Davis, amazing trombonist. Terrell Stafford, amazing trumpet player.
Yes.
Gerald Cannon, and then of course it's like Donald Vega, who's just been coming into his own nonstop recently.
Great pianist.
Just, I mean, it's
funny because it's the band name, but it really is an all-star cast of people. Like, Willie is a huge part of why that album did so well, but that whole ensemble of people is just, it is the Avengers of jazz bands. Like, it is like, if you could just handpick people, it's hard to beat that, especially for our first album.
Yeah, I agree. And then, of course, because we're nerds, obviously, if we're going to talk about Nintendo at the first part, we're going to bring in the Avengers in the second half. I
just check it off.
Done. Don't worry. We'll probably get the Pokemon at some point. Don't worry about it.
Oh, the Pokemon. Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the whole like scavenger hunt if you're a Pokemon Go player. All right, no more nerd references other than
everyone's checked off now.
Yeah, we can just throw in a Darth Vader reference. But Willie Jones, he's such an understated, and like we had a chance to really sort of hang out. At Christmas, because if you're familiar with the most beautiful album cover in history for Christmas Ain't Like It Used to Be. I know most of the people have this cover album as a poster on your wall. I understand, and I do too.
I do too. Is that bad? Is
Well,
that self-centered?
Because the guy on the front is a dreamboat. Jeff.
If the dreamboat is sinking, then yes, that is me.
He's the Titanic of dreamboats. Imagine your dreamboat running into an iceberg. No, that's not true. It's sailing off into the sunset, and it's beautiful. Gosh darn it. But like, yeah, we got a chance to meet him, and like Willie's so funny because he's got the raspiest voice you've ever heard. I'm like, hey Willie.
He's like Batman.
He is.
There's another nerd reference.
He's like, they're right there, full circle. We've come full circle. Every single nerd reference you could ever want checked off. We were like hanging out, and I'm like, man, I love you. He's like, thank you.
But he's so humble, like you were saying. He literally lets his music do the talking for him, because if you're looking at the music we've been suggesting this podcast, go on to YouTube, just look up some of Willie Jones III's solos. Like when he just starts drumming in the middle of a session, it's incredible. It is a show in of itself watching him do his thing.
That is very true. Like, I think of drummers as sort of working particular parts of their kit. You know, there's people who are known for the peripherals, you know, almost the percussive side of their kits. There are some people who are known for their cymbals and their ride work. Hi-hat work is a big thing. Footwork is a big thing. What you do with your feet is a big thing. Are you a snare guy? Are you a tom guy? The interesting thing about like Willie is like when I was watching him work, and it's really weird because when you're ADHD like I am, you also have what's called like hyper focus, meaning like you can almost negate the world. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yep.
When I was watching Willie play the drums, I hyper focused on him, and I was just thought to myself, man, his tom work is, and like it's really interesting because I'm not saying that like he just blazes around the kit at light speed. What I mean is the subtlety. He's got the ability to blaze all day long. Speed is not a gift. All right, I can play fast. It doesn't mean it's good. There's a lot of people out there who play with subtlety, foresight, and most important, intention. And I was watching him play on the toms, and you do these like crazy, or what I say he does these really amazing fills that under every other banner, you would just use the term like, oh, it's understated. But when you're keyed into what's happening around and when he's playing it, you're just like, pardon the foul language. I won't even say it. I'll bleep myself. But I was like, that effing genius.
Yep.
I couldn't believe kind of the things that he was doing up there, the way that he was doing them. And I was, and to me, you know, I'm like, man, I hope other people can sort of appreciate how he's moving around the kit in these particular moments. Because the intention behind it was so inspired. I mean, just even more allegory, and you know, but it was just insane. Like, so Jeff, like you and I, we saw him at our Christmas show.
Yes. Yep. Live on stage, we got to see him, which was a treat. Seeing that was awesome.
An absolute just a gift to just have him up there. And it's not to take away from all the other artists and drummers.
Oh, definitely not. Yes.
And then
but this is a drummer episode.
This is the drummers. Everybody calm down, okay? We're allowed to ooze and gush over whoever we want, and right now it's the drummers.
Yes.
We'll get to the singers and Ella Fitzgerald and Andromeda and all those wonderful people in another podcast. And I bet you we can get Andromeda on here for an interview, which would be absolutely
easy. Yep.
Super awesome, and it'd be great to have her. But right now, people, it's about Willie. All right, and one of the great things is, like, if you go and you listen to Old Cowhand, I'm an Old Cowhand, which is a really weird choice of music from Lovers and Love Songs. But just the way that he starts the song and the way that he plays it through,
yes,
it's fantastic. And then I think the other one is Jitterbug Waltz, which one is it? I'm going through it right now. Oh no, it's From This Moment On. It's a song.
Oh.
You'll know this song if you ever listen to our podcast, because it's how we start and end every podcast. Love that song. Love the energy. He's playing the ride through the whole thing. And the ride is mixed in such a way to keep that song moving the whole time. And very rarely do you hear a song where the trumpet is mixed lower than the ride cymbal. But they recognized the tempo. They realized that the tempo needed to be pushed through the whole song. And that ride with just that hint of sizzle. Oh, that jazz sizzle, Jeffrey. What am I going to do? I hear the sizzle and I'm like, oh my goodness, should I be aroused? No, okay? I go to therapy. I'm getting that worked on, all right? But until that point where I can basically come out with a clear bill of health, the sizzle, okay?
But a lot of the work on Lovers and Love Songs, it was all original, right?
Yep.
So you really get to see, not that doing covers of established music isn't talented, because I can't play any instrument whatsoever, but what's great about Lovers and Love Songs is they're all originals, and you get to see somebody like Willie really show what he can do on all the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And you can instantly tell this guy is a pro at what he does because of just what you were saying. He can, just every song, he'll do something different on it that you don't really hear in other jazz albums, and that's a real treat. So,
and that, I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Omar Hakim into this, because there is sort of that chameleon aspect to Willie where he is and just sort of fits in with what the song needs. A long time ago, as a designer, I had a very famous design mentor once look at my work, and he said one of the most amazing things to me, which I carry around to this day. He said, "That's a great design, but you're designing for yourself and not for the client." And then I realized, oh my goodness, I need to start, I need to learn to design for the client. It's like my style is important, but what I'm really doing is I'm sort of lending it to something else. And that's kind of what Jeffrey does. I'm sorry, the reason why I brought up your name right there is because I was going to say, you said that you weren't a musician, but I was thinking in my head, I was like, yeah, but Jeffrey plays my heartstrings.
That's just because you're looking at the album art that I'm on, right? Which you designed.
Yeah, right, I know, right? Wow! All of a sudden, it just seems so much like nepotism or whatever that is. Like, wow, we're everywhere. But what Willie brings is like he plays to the album, and not just that album. Like we've been talking about Lovers and Love Songs, but there's two other major albums. Of course, there is the Christmas album that we were also sort of congruently talking about, which I know it's not Christmas right now, and I understand that when people get out of the Christmas season, it's like they really want to kick Christmas to the curb and be like, bah humbug, screw Christmas. I hear enough Christmas music as it is in November. But I mean, as soon as Halloween is over, people are like, ah. But please, just look, we all know we have a soft spot for Christmas. Go listen to the album Christmas Ain't Like It Used to Be, because again, our word of the day, the vibe is there.
Yes.
The vibe is there. It's got a smooth feeling to it. And I think the genius about this album, and maybe you can speak a little bit to this as well, Jeffrey, we didn't spend a lot of time hunting down the Christmas classics. We sort of took a left turn at the Christmas crossroads and found some other songs that you don't hear 30 times every day during Christmas.
Right. Which is my favorite part, besides the band members, of course, of that album, was going, oh, great, here's an album of Christmas music I don't hear all the time. Exactly. I legit wanted to listen to it because I thought, man, when you ever get the chance to discover new Christmas music that's really good? Never. Because when I heard we were doing a Christmas album, I'm like, okay, great, it's going to be the classics, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And Kathy Salem, who was on our podcast last time,
Yep.
said, no, we're going to do something totally different. And she got all the right people on the album that could pull it off. And Willie was one of them.
He's again, you know, and in fact, we sort of credit him in some ways. Kind of looking back at it, we're like, John, I mean, not to take away from John DiMartino, because John DiMartino did an amazing job.
Well, this is the drummer episode.
Yeah,
we'll talk about.
I'm sorry, John. Calm down, buddy. All right, you're amazing. Everybody knows it. All right. Your podcast is like 3 podcasts from now, John. Calm down. But just to give you like an example of what Jeffrey was just saying, if you love Elvis, you listen to Blue Christmas all the time. It's just an Elvis song. It's not a Christmas song. And Blue Christmas is on this album. And that's kind of the way that every song is treated. You can listen to this quote-unquote Christmas album, and it's not a Christmas album. It is what it has to be, and it's not any other time. So go listen to it. You'll absolutely love it. But I am going to say, and before we wrap things up here, because we're getting close here, but I would be remiss, and I would probably be fired, if I didn't mention our most newest album. I would definitely be fired, so I got to mention this one here. It also feeds into this, okay? We have this great album called Old, New, Borrowed, and Blue. And this album has, again, sort of the same, it follows the same sort of evocative feeling that Lovers and Love Songs had for me. When I listen to this album has been my soundtrack for the past few months. I'm listening to it nonstop. There's a couple songs on there that, actually I should just say every song is sort of kind of comes at you from left field, and they all come at you from left field in a way that's not disjointed, but like it's always kind of like a cool, pleasant surprise. They feed into each other even though you never would think that they would.
Right.
And this is another one of those cases where, well, guess who's on it? Willie Jones III.
But again, who better to be the drummer on the album than him?
So if you haven't listened to it yet, and again, the reviews are just absolutely astounding. All the reviews, to just basically paraphrase, are like, wow, this is great.
Yes.
And when people ask me for proof, I always say, just Google it. Don't wait for me to tell you how good it is, because that just seems like that seems like being trite, like I'm trying to prove something to you. Go look up the reviews for yourself. All right, let your own set of eyes sort of prove what they are. But there are some songs on there that I'm absolutely massively in love with. One of them is a song called "Tune for Mr. T," and it is like whenever I hear that song, I just want to put on a tank top and a pair of zoot suit pants and walk down the street like I own the mother effer. And I know nobody's gonna. I mean, it's like the trumpets are crazy. Willie's drum through the whole thing is just sort of like this controlled manic walking pace through the whole piece.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like somebody who owns the effing street, and it's definitely sort of like that it's almost West Side Story, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Oh, that is a great way to put that.
It's got a great West Side Story vibe to it, so go listen to that. It's very badass. All right, that's as bad as the words are going to get. Blue and sentimental when you want to slow things down a little bit. And you kind of want to bring it into sort of that close, sort of clutchy, sort of holding on to somebody's slow dance feeling. Mm-hmm. Blue Sentimental is that. Willie's playing, I think, the brushes through that whole set. And by the way, if you've never played brushes on a drum set and you think it's easy, it's not. That's a whole level of control, which I don't have. I caveman bang drum hard. Willie play very nice. He makes it sound so beautiful and so elegant. If you sort of want to have a little bit of a film noir feeling, go listen to 2 Degrees East, 3 Degrees West. It sounds so whodunit, so black and white, so contrast.
Yes.
It is, and again, he's playing. I think he's playing the brushes on that song too, but he plays them in a much more traditional sort of style. It's hard to explain, but when you listen to it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And then I'm trying to think about what else is on there. The Gypsy is another great. The Gypsy is a song that is very evocative of sort of like that 11 p.m. empty velvet bar. Just
see, I'm disappointed you haven't named my favorite, which is actually the first one on it. Yes, Hudson River Wind.
Oh my god.
That's my favorite one. That's my favorite one on it.
Hudson's favorite wind. Okay, so it's like if you wanted the song that was like the upbeat action sort of like 70s show intro, it is so good. When I first heard this album and I was talking to Kathy about it, I just said, man, every song has a memory that I've never lived in attached to it. Like I can literally live in time periods that I never got to experience. And that is like such a freaking gift, man. To just be like, to be transported to like, oh my God, Hudson River Wind. Like when you listen to Hudson River Wind, you are on the Hudson River. Mm-hmm. You are literally there. You can see the bridges. You can hear the people. You can see the pigeons. It's crazy. It's all about that. It's all about
this was the album I was listening to that I said I was vibing out yesterday because this album, it's like you said, I don't know. There's just the way the songs are done, the way it's put together, that each one makes you feel something that you don't quite know what it is, but I guess it's the word of the day. The vibe from this album is unreal. I just love this album so much. Am I biased? A little bit. But
it's okay. I mean, if you're gonna be biased towards the best.
Sure. Because we have people like Willie Jones III, who's on this album, that helped make it as good as it is. And it's not just us saying it. I mean, I've got countless radio stations I've been contacting that are playing their stuff. Mm-hmm. It's trending on, when you look up jazz music on Apple Music, it's on there. So, it's not just us. But yeah, I just really dig this album. And I agree what you said earlier. I have the same kind of feelings about it that I did with Lovers and Love Songs. Mm-hmm. It's such original music. It's so well done. And you got people like Willie Jones on there that really make the album that much better. So please check it out. It is well worth the listen, as well as all the other people we've talked about tonight, right? Get them to listen to.
I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I could wrap tonight up better than that. I mean, just follow Jeffrey's advice. Go listen to Omar. Go listen to Chick Webb. Go listen to Max Roach. And please go listen to Willie Jones III, Lovers and Love Songs, Old New Borrowed and Blue. And if you're not jaded, so close after the holiday season, at least go look at the cover for Christmas Ain't Like It Used to Be. It'll be worth it. And do us a favor. If you like our podcast, feel free to get a hold of us. We have a comment section. We post everything here on YouTube. Go ahead and leave a comment for us. Ask us questions. If there's people that you'd like us to interview, go ahead and ask. We can always reach out and see if we can get them on here for you. And we just appreciate the fact that you guys love jazz as much as we do. The one thing that I'll just leave us with before we end tonight is that Jeffrey and I came in here as fresh little jazz babies. When we started this, we were brand new to this world, and there was so much that we didn't know. And then as we've grown with the products that we've helped build, we've also grown with the community. We've learned to appreciate the history, and it's just been so rewarding, way beyond than I think either Jeff or I could ever truly attest to. Am I overstating that?
No, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll be back hopefully soon. It's on me to get these things rolling. I'm such a procrastinator. There's so much stuff going on, but we'll do our best to get here more often in front of you guys. So from myself and from Jeffrey.
Hey, yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Definitely check out the music and support your local jazz venue, jazz musician, any jazz album. Give them your support. Give them a listen. It really does make the difference.
Fantastic. And enjoy the end of Black History Month. Go out and just explore it. Beyond the artists that we talked about today, go out there and explore more of the wonderful Black history that is part of music. It is completely entwined, and you'll be surprised by how many of if not just the people you look up to, the people that they looked up to were rooted in Black history and in all of that. So thank you all so much for listening. This has been the Daily Dose of Jazz podcast, and we will see you soon.